From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! Uprising in Egypt. It's day 14. Protests continue in Tahrir Square.
I'm here in Tahrir Square, and I'm determined to be on the side of the people, not the regime. So and that's why I'm here.
Right, and so you've resigned from Nile Television?
I walked out yesterday. I can't be part of the propaganda machine. I'm not going to feed the public lies.
Mubarak's propaganda machine. Some state journalists are speaking out against state control. We'll speak with a reporter from Nile TV who resigned in protest. And we'll hear from journalists in Tahrir Square about their struggle to report from the streets.
The first day they beat me. The first day they beat me. The other days, you know, every time they find out you're a journalist, they will pursue you. I have started to say that I'm something else, you know. And today is the first day I walk with a camera. The other days I've just been reporting on the telephone out of fear of being attacked again.
We'll also be joined by Democracy Now! Senior producer Sharif Abou-Kouddous in Cairo for the latest on possible negotiations for a transition government. And we'll learn the story behind Obama's crisis envoy to Egypt, Frank Wisner, who has called for Mubarak to stay in power. Wisner works for a lobbying firm that represents the Egyptian government. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Pro-democracy protests in Egypt have entered their 14th day as thousands of activists remain in Tahrir Square in Cairo calling for the ouster of Hosni Mubarak. On Sunday, Egypt's new vice president, Omar Suleiman, held talks with a series of opposition groups, including members of the Muslim Brotherhood, an opposition group that's been banned in Egypt since 1954. During an interview on ABC, Suleiman said Mubarak could not resign before his term ends later this year.
We don't want chaos in our country. If President Mubarak will say that I'm leaving now, who will take over? In the Constitution, that means the Speaker will take over. I think with this atmosphere, that means the other people who have their own agenda will make instability in our country.
Many of the pro-democracy protesters rejected the talks, saying Mubarak and his colleagues must first leave office before political negotiations can occur.
We are asking for the change. We don't want him anymore. Him or his colleagues or his government. Imagine, everything is false. Our senators, they succeeded by false, by cheating the people, by police. What this? We need change. We need to feel free. We need liberty.
On Saturday, President Obama's special envoy to Egypt, Frank Wisner, openly called for Mubarak to stay in office. Wisner said, quote, Mubarak must stay in office in order to steer those changes through. This is an ideal moment for him to show the way forward, he said. The White House has attempted to back away from Wisner's comments, but the Obama administration's refused to call for Mubarak's immediate resignation. President Obama spoke last night on Fox News.
Egypt is not going to go back to what it was. The Egyptian people want freedom. They want free and fair elections. They want a representative government. They want a responsive government. And so what we've said is you have to start a transition now. Mubarak's already decided he's not running for re-election again. His term is up this year. And what we've said is, let's make sure that you get all the groups together in Egypt, let the Egyptian people make a determination. What's the process for an orderly transition, but one that is a meaningful transition?
The Egyptian security forces continue to crack down on human rights workers and journalists. On Sunday, authorities detained Ayman Mohyeldin, the Cairo bureau chief for Al Jazeera English. He was held for 7 hours and then released. Egyptian authorities have also acknowledged they detained a Google executive named Wael Ghonim, who had mysteriously disappeared a week ago. Ghonim was administrator to a Facebook page that helped inspire the protests. Earlier today, protesters in Tahrir Square held a symbolic funeral procession for Ahmed Mohamed Mahmoud, the Egyptian journalist who was shot dead by a sniper while he was covering the protests. Meanwhile, on Saturday, the Egyptian government released 35 foreign and Egyptian human rights activists, including a representative from Amnesty International. Salih El-Shati is the Secretary General of Amnesty.
Suspect that this is a very premeditated, attack from the government and the authorities because they don't want Amnesty International to record human rights violations. They don't want to be held to account, which is what Amnesty does. And they want to distract us from what we are doing. And, rather than focusing on the substance of what's happening in Egypt, they want us to do, spend all our time figuring out what's the security and safety of our staff.
In other news, former President George W. Bush has been forced to cancel a planned trip to Switzerland after human rights attorneys threatened to take legal action against him for sanctioning the use of torture. The trip to Geneva was supposed to be President Bush's first to Europe since leaving office. He was scheduled to speak next Saturday at a dinner in honor of United Israel Appeal. The Center for Constitutional Rights said they'd planned to bring a complaint against Bush under the Convention Against Torture on behalf of 2 men who were tortured by U.S. interrogators and held at Guantanamo. In addition, Amnesty International said it had sent a detailed analysis to Swiss prosecutors claiming there was sufficient information to open a criminal investigation against Bush. Matthew Pollard is an attorney with Amnesty International.
What we're specifically bringing to the attention of the Swiss authorities are statements that Mr. Bush himself made in early November 2010, both on broadcast television in the United States and also in print in his memoirs that were published also at the end of 2010, in which he, without any apology, admits that he authorized specifically the waterboarding of several identified individuals in particular cases.
The nation's official unemployment rate dipped to 9% in January, but only 36,000 new jobs were added to the economy. The only reason the level dropped was because the number of unemployed workers who have given up looking for work rose by 200,000 to 2.8 million. These former workers are no longer considered part of the labor force and are not counted in the unemployment rate. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports more than 15% of Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans were unemployed in the month of January. That's the highest level since the Bureau began collecting data on veterans in 2005. According to the government, 15.2% of veterans were out of work in January, up from 12.6% the same month a year ago. Veterans advocates warn the numbers could increase as the U.S. military begins winding down operations in Afghanistan and veterans return home looking for work. Corporate America has sent Republican lawmakers a wish list of more than 150 government rules and regulations they want to see rolled back or preempted. Congressman Darrell Issa had asked the oil industry, drug manufacturers, health care providers and telecom firms to tell him which government regulations he should target this year as the new chair of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. According to the Washington Post, the Business Roundtable voiced concern over executive pay disclosures. The coal mining company Murray Energy said that environmental protection agencies' greenhouse gas and clean air rules must be stopped immediately. At least 13 industry groups targeted the EPA's proposed attempt to regulate coal ash. Also under scrutiny is a Federal Aviation Administration plan to combat pilot fatigue by mandating more rest time between shifts. The wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has started a lobbying firm in an effort to become the, quote, ambassador to the Tea Party movement. Virginia Thomas has promised to use her, quote, experience and connections to help clients of her new firm, Liberty Consulting, raise money and increase their political impact. Legal experts say the news could raise a number of ethical questions for Justice Thomas. In Iran, the trial has begun for 3 American hikers who were arrested June 2009 on spying charges after they allegedly crossed into Iran from Iraq. Freelance journalist Shane Bauer and his friend Josh Fatal have been detained for more than 18 months. Bauer's fiancée, Saur Shord, spent 14 months in jail before being released on bail in September. Last week, she was summoned to Iran for the trial but remains in the United States. All 3 have pleaded not guilty. During the trial, Shane Bauer said they were arrested while vacationing in the region.
I was in Iraqi Kurdistan as a tourist with my fiancée, Sarah.
Josh and her friend Sean.
Masood Shaifi, an attorney for the three, complained about the proceedings because he was not allowed to meet with his clients until just before the trial began.
At this stage of the case, despite repeated requests, I've still not had permission to see Shane or Josh. However, we have spoken to the judge, who has arranged for me to have access to them both 1 or 2 hours before the 10 a.m. trial.
One of the three hikers, Shane Bauer, is an independent journalist, and you can go to our website at democracynow.org to see his report for Democracy Now! You can also see our extended interview with Sarah Shourd, another of the hikers, when she was set free. She came to Democracy Now! Thousands of Iraqis took to the streets this weekend to complain of limited electricity, shoddy water and sewage services, and potential layoffs in government jobs. In the city of Basra, approximately 1,500 protesters got into a shoving match with riot police, while demonstrators presented provincial officials a list of demands. In a press conference Sunday, Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki announced he would increase monthly food rations for all Iraqis by about $12. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is back in a London court today, fighting extradition to Sweden for questioning about alleged sex crimes. In news from Africa, tens of thousands of people marched in Dakar, Senegal, Sunday to mark the start of the World Social Forum. Speakers at the week-long event include the Bolivian president, Evo Morales, as well as organizers from the popular uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt. A Florida man has been accused of stabbing another man in the neck after learning he was Muslim. According to an arrest affidavit, Samad Ebadi told 52-year-old Bradley Kent Strott he was a Muslim. Investigators say Strott then grabbed Ebadi by his shirt and stabbed him in the neck with a pocket knife. Strott then reportedly told Ebadi that, quote, Muslims are the root of the problems. Ebadi was treated for his wound and was not seriously hurt. And the internet firm AOL has agreed to buy the Huffington Post website for $315 million. Under the deal, Arianna Huffington will oversee editorial content on Huffington Post and other AOL-owned sites. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.